every console except for the PS5. We are obtaining it now. And we do our research through student and faculty led initiatives. And right now, like Connor was talking about, working with 4 MetaQuest 2s, and we were talking about wanting to do VR work. And one of the interesting things that came from that was we had a student, Leo, who was just randomly like, well, I know an engineering staff member that has like 25 of those just sitting in a closet that he's doing nothing with. And we were like, well, we're about to buy these. Why don't we just like ask him? And so he asked him, and he was like, yeah, you can have, like, how many do you need? And we were like, 4. And so they just gave us 4 MetaQuest 2s, and like that's how we got them and started doing VR research, was literally by interacting with other groups and just having our network start. And Leo, like, we haven't seen Leo in a couple of weeks now, not months. And he's the one that got it all started, got us the goggles, and then Connor's been working on that. And so it's also another big, the G in gaming, Meeting Gaming Lab push has been from Campbell. And I'm going to switch over to kind of giving a brief introduction to the performance visualization in fine arts. Yeah, you just, so all you have to do is click on other user and click one, there we go. So we have Dr. Connor, Dr. Campbell, and Dr. Sims. Yes, oh man, I remembered everybody's name. I'm proud of myself. And one of the things that really excites me about them is that the last media and gaming conference that we put on, well, the first one that we put on back last year, was the first time I had like formally worked with Will and Campbell on a conference. And we met each other in February of 2023 and quickly became besties. And ever since then, we've been collaborating, and they're in the Performance Visualization and Fine Arts School, or School of Performance Visualization and Fine Arts, who also is reckoning with maybe being called the College of, oh, it's official now? Okay, they are the College of Performance Visualization and Fine Arts. We call it PVFA because it's just so hard to say sometimes. But the gap between us, we're in the media, we're in arts and sciences. I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences. That's where communication journalism is. The gap between the two of us is vast. This is a 70,000 person campus. Our college is 18,000 students. Their college is 400 students. Physically, we're not separated too much, but in terms of collaboration, we're very far apart and have been very far apart for a long time. And so to have us come together and kind of go over those seas has been really amazing. And what y'all are going to get to see are projects that all of them are working on, and also collaborations that we've done together. And it's been really, really great. So I can't wait for y'all to get to hear about them. And without further ado, oh, you still getting set up? Okay. Hold on, let me put this over here. Oh, no problem. So yeah, it's okay. The other thing I'll say is that Will and I have really teamed up physically in terms of just providing as many resources as we can in terms of giving students opportunity. And then Campbell and Will, they are the program. Well, you're the sponsors for the radio station here on campus, KAFN? No, KANN. And they just got, or will be getting a FM transmitter soon for low power radio. And it's pretty exciting. It's going to be something that will be new and different, and something that I think also will kind of, it's very retro. Like it sounds crazy, But hear me out. I think students are going to start listening to FM just because it's like taking Polaroid photos. It's like, because why not? You know, like we can tune in and they're going to like have this whole other thing going on. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. Are y'all ready? Okay, cool. So without further ado, here we go.
Howdy. It's on. Is this thing on?
Yes, it's on.
So a great introduction to who we are and what we do. Part of the what we do component is in the teaching side. Teaching in the arts is different than teaching in STEM. And if you come from, or I came from a STEM background before I got into the arts, and having that ability to speak across those types of disciplinary differences is really important, especially at a school like A&M that is really rooted in STEM. We're moving into this direction where the arts are valued, the arts are celebrated, but we've got a long way to go with that because we are new as a college. Now, I teach in the film studies department, which is still over in that area of the scholarly treatment of the arts, as opposed to the practice. In doing that, I teach in the Creative Core curriculum. So I teach a class, film analysis, that covers and supports students across every major under the sun here. STEM, comm, the arts, the liberal arts, all of this is mixed together. So you can imagine that might be a little bit difficult to meet every student where they are when you have this very different approach that's disciplinary rooted. And I do that through creating a learning community so that we can learn from those differences and bring those different perspectives to the table. So my class is rooted in a Socratic method. Class discussion is the primary thing that we do in my classes to get at that difference in perspectives. So we're getting the disciplinary differences, we're getting cultural differences, and we're getting those generational differences because I'm there to lead it. I tell my students I lead, I don't feed. So wherever they take the discussion is where I go with it. While balancing the things I know we need to hit with the curriculum without biasing the discussion at the same time. Now, in my smaller classes where I get to, which are so much fun, where I get to do more practice-based in the arts. For example, I have a class that I created called Story for the Screen, that we're looking at the foundations of story in order to perform it through my disciplinary expertise is in film production. So my Story for the Screen class is building the way that stories communicate through film. And in this semester in particular, I was looking at just how difficult that is, which is ironic because we're in such a media saturated culture in the United States. Everyone's on TikTok, right? Well, except for state universities, but right? But I mean, how many of you guys, your primary time sink, right? What is your primary entertainment? Is it going to a movie theater? Is it scrolling through social media on your phone, right? Is it even on your computer? When you look at where you are, it's going to be media intensive, but what type of media is that? And if it's a different thing than going to the theater, then what we're doing is looking at media not as its individual thing. We've conflated. And it's a whole thing with the way that the streamers have disrupted, as well as social media have disrupted entertainment. Some would argue that's good. Some might argue that's bad, but it's just a reality. So what I've been doing with this smaller class that is more practice-based is flipping my pedagogical model. And that's what I wanted to talk about and share with you guys today. While my media studies, my film analysis class is discussion-based in that Socratic method, where I'm asking questions. I'm not telling students what I think. I'll provide information, but it's their job to assimilate and use it as a tool for us to keep going. For my practice-based classes, and I totally forgot to start my timer. That's fun. Okay. Y'all have to stop me when I'm over. What I do is I flip this model to an apprenticeship style. So the one, we're emulating more of what it is actually like in industry. Most people in Hollywood do not go to film school. They start in the mailroom, work their way up, and learn as they go. And that's something that I can actually model in the classroom. So as the expert in the room, I cringe when I say that though. As the one with the more experience in the room, I can model this married with my pedagogical expertise. I have a PhD in education, so I know how to structure, depending on the type of audience that I'm teaching towards, right? That I prefer to say leading. That apprenticeship style allows me to not only emulate what's in the industry, but at the same time, do the things that are within the confines of academia. We have a way of doing things, right? You learn in a certain way in academia, in these formal environments, educational environments that are different than an informal environment. If you're just going out and learning in the wild, you're using YouTube, you're looking at tutorials, right? Very different ways of approaching. So with this apprenticeship style, I try to bring in an industry professional. This semester, we just had our apprenticeship experience where I brought in a working professional screenwriter named Paul Guillot, who recently wrote a book about screenwriting and telling you the truth about how the industry is actually working that is not evident with all the gurus that are out there writing books. So having him in the classroom for 2 weeks, leading and helping students to develop their stories. We did things in groups during that week, wrote a screenplay for each group during that week, got their critique from a professional. And that was used as the tool construction for my students, the muscle construction, to then after he leaves, they're doing individual projects to meet the full curriculum goals for the semester. So with that apprenticeship style, I'm navigating through some of the constraints that happen within an educational system. But at the same time, it's giving them this real world experience of bringing the world into the classroom. So that's what I wanted to share.
Ah.
All right. Howdy, y'all. So as Dr. Sims alluded to, we are all lecturers within the PPFA, which means that the majority of our ratios for our appointments are focused on teaching, and that can be anywhere between 70 and 90%. Also, since we're new lecturers, well, Will and I are. We also teach core classes. Oh, yeah, sorry. Core classes. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so used to being too loud.
It was a good joke.
Yeah.
He's a soft talker.
Okay. Thank you. So, typically, I will have 1 or 2 performance studies majors in my class a term, which means I can't assume any kind of prior knowledge on this background or any of the other similar backgrounds that we're going to talk about in a class. But I want everybody to be engaged. Also, I would say maybe like a third of a class generally has what they would themselves describe as a creative bone in their body. And this is more of a self-report. This is not what I think they're all creative, obviously. But they don't think of themselves that way. And so when they're confronted with a class where they not only have to investigate cultures from around the world and have to use performance ethnography to think about these different spaces and use embodied techniques to understand other ways of being, we also want them to perform, and we want them to create something themselves and give their own interpretation. But how do you do that with a class of half engineers, 40 accountants, free dentists, and like animal sciences, like it's all over the map, right? So we've kind of been working on this the last year, and last semester, Dr. Connor and I, well, decided to throw our own festival and essentially have students create their own stories based on local stories to get people involved in the local community. So, anyone recognize any of these? That one over there.
San Antonio.
Yeah, yeah. South side. I don't know what that one is. Well, that should even cover one of the versions. That's closer to the Puerto Rican. There's a lot of different versions of that one. This is the Lake Worth monster. Also the goat man.
Oh.
And what is this one?
The black eyed children.
Black eyed children. This is not a thing I have heard of.
Oh.
My students have heard of it.
Yeah.
So in kind of coming up with actually I used to be a DJ, so I like having two screens. So we thought, okay, well, it's going to be around Halloween. Let's make them spooky, and we're just going to come up with some stories. Some stories people have heard before from their grandparents, from their parents, on the schoolyard. Like people are constantly passing these things around. So we've got built up a repository of about 40 stories. Most of them with some kind of purchase here in the Rio Grande Valley, in Brazos Valley. But we also wanted to ask our students to collect stories from their parents. So we had students do ethnographies and oral histories with 2 different generations in their families, gather stories about from everything from Korean Dokkaebi to the Czech, what's it called again? Vodnik, right. And that's based on the fact that, or that's keying into elements of European immigration in Texas in the 19th century, and the fact that these stories are still around and they're still being perpetuated. So after they created these stories, like, okay, now do some investigation, dig into them, find some sources. But very importantly, they're realizing there's not one story. Something cannot be folklore if there's only one version of it. Then I gave them a bunch of steps because I like steps, but also it makes people a lot less scared. They're like, okay, I know calculus, give me a bunch of problems. I'm like, all right, here you go. Here's every single step. You're going to claim your story. You're going to give me a proposal. You're going to do some research, and that research is going to be ethnographic, but it's also going to be bibliographic. I want to dig into some actual books, but I also want you to go to a site. And a lot of people are like, well, I can't go to Czechoslovakia and check out Vodnik. Like, no, you can go to a stream or a river or somewhere around town, or to a Czech bakery and talk to someone there and see what kind of experience you can pull out of that. But I want students to be investigating, talking to living human breathing people, and also visiting interesting new locations. Ultimately, what we wanted to do was after they created their story, we wanted them to perform. And we ended up having a bunch of cool ideas, and our students had way more cool ideas. So we ended up having 3 consecutive nights of events for Lore Fest that we decided to call it, with that unfortunate capitalization that's now like part of the website, so we can't change it anymore. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And we split this into 3 nights. We had our storytelling session, our film festival, and the Ghost Walk Gala, and also Walkabout Puppets. And to set this part up, also, we're artists in different ways. I don't know if I would call myself a polymath, but thank you, Joey, for donning that title on everybody in the room. I'm good with that. But I don't know how to make film, so we brought in a filmmaker. I don't know how to really tell a story in like an epic screen, so we brought in Dr. Sims. I don't really know how to make a podcast, so we brought somebody in. We held workshops, brought Joey in as well. So I teach students other ways of storytelling so they can come up with some way to make these stories their own and contribute to that kind of local folklore. Night 1, storytelling session. You took over the Frame Gallery down in Bryan, and which they transformed it into like a fireside chat. It was great. The story on the side here is the Chupacabra story. Do you see the Chupacabra? No, but you see the cow that it kills. It has a name and has a speaking part in the story. It's delightful. So this was basically a 3-hour story session where a lot of the students were able to kind of give one version of the story that they might have made a film about, or they might have made some food about, which is our third night. But we recreated the space and we overfilled it. We had like 200 people in that tiny little space, most of whom were out on the
About 70,
sidewalk.
yeah.
70 people, yeah, you know. But a lot of people had to stand outside.
For
without
70
people,
people.
yeah.
They had 200.
Oh, yeah, yeah, right, that's what I.
Yeah.
On our second night, we decided to have a film festival, and this was in the Village Cafe right next door, which again we filled up very unexpectedly. We were supposed to do it at the Queen, and then the Queen decided to tear out most of its theater seats and went from the space of 150 down to like 45. Like, well, we were going to have more than that. So Christy Petty from the Village Cafe and Bohem offered up her space. But again, we want to give them some constraints and to like give them a way to get into these creative projects without getting too worried about not being able to realize their creative vision. So we have them do black and white films that were about like less than 4 minutes length, and importantly, silent, because we were also collaborating with Will's other classes on sonic design and small ensembles and the electroacoustic, right, class. So they did live soundtracks to our silent films on this night. Also, I'm forgetting his name right now. Shunli Fong, visiting filmmaker, came and gave us a keynote speech, judged some of the films. It was great and very, very loud, and we filled up the space.
And didn't we also show his film?
Yes, and we showed his film, which was super creepy, and I watched it like a dozen times. It was great. And we also had films from the Swamp student organization as well, which is what the acronym stands for in this moment. But screenwriters and actors, something like that. Yeah. But the primary sort of student film organization. And then our last night was kind of our catch-all, but our most like emotionally engaging, I think, for a lot of us and for our students. We took over the village again, and we had a spread of students who had made various foodways. Like there was a sheep-shaped cupcakes that had a red center. That was for the Chupacabra story. That would fit into it, but that was pretty good. Yeah. Mexican hot chocolate for Yala Llorona. And we had Victoria Snape lead our ghost walk. Some of our students created basically stops along this ghost walk, and we took people around town, and they stopped in various spaces. And one of them was on actually the train tracks that are a couple blocks away from where this photo was taken. And this was also the opportunity for our puppet parade. You can see one of the best puppets there up on the right, full body puppets that Victoria can talk about when she's up here. But altogether, students had unexpectedly emotional and sort of deep experiences, and also importantly, they were off campus. So I wanted to show a documentary that Alazar Ozrat and Marco Verdes created for us on that night. Both former students, gesticulatory. Both former students of Joey, to give you a sense of what this was like. And we know where the volume was an opportunity.
Need help with the sound?
Yeah, James.
Okay. All right.
Our students in the performance studies program engage with their own folklore and the folklore of the Bryan College Station area, especially the Provincetown. Or often sort of spooky, strange stories, but usually cross-culturally.
He tried to hit me again and again and again. All I could see was shattered glass over a dash, and a cloaked figure crouched in the face of her victim once more.
To learn more about their their atmosphere and their environment and often their own family histories.
Hi, I'm Emily Pritchard,
And I'm Jack Hurt.
and we are the folktale tellers of the story of El Lago Salado, a Texas folktale.
It's time to get you down to bed. How about folktale?
Folktale, Grandpa, I'm not a baby. I'm just very story.
You think folktales aren't scary? You think they're stupid?
Yes.
Folktales aren't stupid.
And we have turned it into a sort of play, focusing on one of the characters. The grandpa that appears as in our play is the same old man who appears in our story and tells the boys to not go to the lake. And the lake at the center of our story has this giant gaping hole at the bottom that when they get people to dive into it, they find themselves in a cave of wonders where they see catfish the size of men and all sorts of marine life. And it was really cool to be able to research the story. We actually didn't find a lot online about this story, as Jack can attest.
No, there's like 2 retellings of this story online. And we ended up interviewing it's like a geology professor, and he was able to give us some insight because we found like no other information about this. It's like some small South Texas folk story. But it was really fun to kind of, I mean, there's only so much to go off of, so we got to have like our own spin on it. So it was really fun being able to have like our own version of the story. And yeah.
So it was really special to be able to perform here tonight, and then also going to be having an additional performance because this is likely one of the only times the story of El Lago Salado has ever been performed. Unlike stories of La Llorona or some of the other Texas folk tales, the Lady of the Lake is of course a retelling of The Woman in White. No hate, but El Lago Salado was just witnessed as one of probably the first times it's ever been recorded live before an audience and retold. Yeah.
Uncle Lorca.
Uncle Lorca.
How competitive it got.
We gave them the tools they needed to fulfill the ideas, realize the things they had imagined once they'd done their research and seen these creative stories. Then they had their own spin on it, which is the fun part, I think, for us. And that was the main thing that we did, the facilitators.
Howdy, my name is Kaza Chaudhary, and right now we are at the Lore Fest Film Festival, where a bunch of students have made silent films, and we have made basically soundtracks to them using our instruments and like our music knowledge.
Hi, my name is Jaden Driver. I am a senior sociology major, philosophy minor, and youth development minor. This experience has been really fun. I've been in performance classes before, but I've never had one where I've been required to come out to Bryan. I think it's really cool to bring kids to Bryan, bring students to Bryan, because you don't do that often. A lot of people go to school here and graduate without ever stepping foot in Bryan. So I think it's pretty cool. I'm a Bryan native, born and raised here. But it's a pretty cool experience. Me and my group members, we're just a really random mix of people. So just kind of going to class and being forced to get creative with this really random group of people. We had a lot of different ideas going, a lot of laughs. It was pretty cool. I would definitely do it again and I would recommend it.
The goal worked, and that is to say they researched local material, they engaged with local material, and they injected their own take into the local material, meaning they are now part of the local material. And that was the whole idea, was how, having students and community kind of merge, blur some lines, and I feel like that worked tremendously well.
Well, I went to all 3 nights and it was really great to see the students both as performers and as an audience. They were really supportive of each other. It was great to see the business owners really light up to seeing students in their space, especially because we were at capacity. It was just great.
Hi, my name is Miriam.
I'm Peter.
I'm Daniel.
And we had the story of the Black-Eyed Children. And so what we decided to do was a puppet show of a reenactment of this actual scene that happened, which is supposed to be a true story of Brian Bethel's encounter with the Black-Eyed Children. But we added our own kind of elements to it by adding a fake backstory and then kind of like a fake ending.
I will say with overall this class altogether and this performance thing, it's been very unique. I've never been able to have an opportunity like this inside Texas A&M in a class where it's it's not just a class itself. This is an experience and getting people together to get to know each other outside of class and connect and learn things about the university, but not also Texas itself and just history about lore stuff, Halloween stuff. It makes it all interesting combining all that together in one thing.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this is not a usual experience that you have in your other classes, especially since a lot of us are different majors. I'm a bio major, and Peter's a poli sci major, and they have a chem major. So we all have never really had to do performance things, but this gives us an outlet to be able to apply our more creative side.
News came from the big city that the divers had been found 100 miles away in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, I would say Lorefest is basically College Station's Halloween festival equivalent. So if you're into spooky things, getting out here, seeing local artists, local films, local music acts, then Lorefest is a great place to come out and just experience the spooky Halloween season and get to see all the products that the A&M Perf department has been creating this whole time.
I'm Victoria, a director and writer from the UK, and I've been involved with Lorefest because they have been turning their urban legends, their ghost stories, and their folk tales into puppetry. Puppetry is something that I'm really passionate about. When I was doing my master's, I studied puppetry and puppet making, and so I brought those skills here to work with the students. We ran a workshop where I was teaching the 3 rules of puppetry. That's how you can bring anything to life, make the inanimate animate. So I did that with all the students. It was 200 or so students. And then that inspired some of them to make their own puppets, which we performed in a walkabout at this venue and next door. It was so wonderful to see students who have never considered puppetry at all anything more than a children's form of entertainment, and see the transformation in them and the passion into making something with their hands, gaining new skills, and then performing for people. I had so much fun, and I hope that I'll get to do it again in next year's Lorefest.
Look forward to what it's going to become over the next year or 3 years or 5 years. We're hoping to make this an annual event, and in doing so, we're probably not going to repeat the same thing over and over again. There might be some staple elements, things like that, but we've already got some different things planned. For next time, we already have interest from other areas of our school and other areas of the university and want to get engaged. Other community members have expressed interest as well. And so, that's just going to provide us with different outlets of creative expression to engage with the folklore.
One of the areas that we didn't get to this year that I'm excited about is we've been gathering local folk songs from the Prenti Valley and Brazos Valley area. And I would love to have a slate of bands bringing their own folklore tales, but also covering these songs from sometimes 120 years ago. But also more recent fare from Psychobilly, which is something that Dr. Tari studies, which is focused on the macabre and like zombie romance subjects like this. There's actually a pretty strong scene of that in Texas. So I would love to get bands together specifically to musically recreate these stories.
What I was kind of expecting coming in was for it to just have kind of like a normal academic expectation of people showing up because they have to, and the energy was nothing of the sorts, and that really shocked me in a good way. I was really excited by that. I think Professor Connor and Professor Campbell really built a great balance of expectation for the students in terms of expectation to attend, but expectation to enjoy. And that was really amazing. And it's rare. You don't see that all the time when you go to events.
All right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So for this year's Lorefest, we have effectively combined 4 classes to work on this one project that will be performed at Lorefest. And that's an adaptation of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, but set in an Aggie land context. So between my class was what will be Story for Audio Media. We will be the writer-producer side of it. Will's class, Sonnet Design, will be doing the Foley work, the sound design of the performance. Campbell's class will be contributing some of the lore for it. And then our acting professor, Anne Quackenbush's, that's hard to say, acting class will be part of the performers themselves. So we're aiming to have it as a live performance at Lorefest, and potentially maybe broadcast. We're still working on some details, but this is part of that apprenticeship model. We'll be hopefully be able to bring in, I say hopefully because we're still working out the details, but a professional voice actor that I know. Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Victoria will be involved as well. Yes. To work with the students under that apprenticeship model for my class in particular. And then moving through production, Victoria will have a bigger part in that side of it as well. We're excited about this.
Cool. Well, howdy, everybody. Now you're stuck with the person who doesn't mind talking in the microphones, and I'll be quiet and not dance around very much. Possibly, maybe. I want to follow up on these 2 great ideas. There's the idea of apprenticeship. There's the idea of working with students that are STEM students and working with PERF students, and the collaborations and cooperations and all kinds of different forms of getting students to work and produce. But I have an addition to this that I want to throw into the mix, which is constructionism. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do in my experimental music classes. I often use what we work with. The 3 of us are in a program called the STYLE program. We're getting a certificate in teaching and learning. And what's that? The study of teaching and learning is scholarship, whatever, civil. It has something to do with teaching, and that's all we care about. It's supposed to give us ideas on how we can create an environment in our classroom that allows for deeper retention of the material that's being presented. And the way that all three of us actually kind of prefer to do it is introduce some level of creation in the classroom. And all of our classes are creative based to begin with, but that doesn't mean that we are forced to get our students to do anything creative in the classroom. But we choose to do that. And that's sort of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how I do it particularly, but I think I'm kind of speaking for everybody up here, at least to some extent. And then I want to expand on that and talk about why it's important. You know, what's the benefit of doing this? So I teach, let me talk about me. Look, there's a picture of me. I teach performance studies, I teach music technology. My background is in experimental music and musical instrument construction. So I've studied musical instrument construction in various cultural contexts. I lived in Alaska for a while, studied shaman drum building. Lived in Europe for a while and studied medieval style drum construction. I lived in Tibet for a while, studied Tibetan instrument construction, things like this. And I also perform music that we'll just say is more or less like soundtrack type music. It's an exploration of sound more than it is anything else. And those things have informed what I like to teach, what I'm able to teach, and they also have informed how I teach. So each of my classes basically ends up having to build something. So in my classroom model, I always have my students actually engage in things. I don't like to just completely sit around and talk, despite what you might be thinking right now, based on the 30 seconds you've seen of me running my mouth. But more, I like to combine a PPP method with constructionism. Now, there's a couple of things to point out already. We're already in a territory of what the hell are you talking about? So I'm going to go through PPP in a second. Constructionism is something that they talk about in our style classes. And most of us are used to constructivism, but constructionism actually adds this element of making. It adds an element of producing something physical. They call them an asset. And the assets are what is actually the catalyst for the learning in the constructionism model. So let's look at the PPP. PPP is presentation, practice, and production. And if that doesn't tell you anything, I don't know if any of the teachers in here are used to the PPP method. I know some of them are. Well, some of them taught me the PPP method. He said, looking at Victoria. She taught me. Presentation. Presentation is where the person leading the class, for example, gives a lecture, hosts a discussion, gives the exposure to whatever information you're trying to impart, introduces the material. And that's usually the first part of the lesson. You go through the section of presenting some sort of material. Often it's something that they haven't been exposed to before, and that's kind of the point, right? You take a class to learn new stuff. So the presentation comes first in a lesson. Then you move on to a practice element where you are engaging with that material that you just introduced so the students can kind of have a go at it. They can familiarize themselves with it a little bit. They can start to internalize through repetition, things like this, like in a language class, for example, you'd say, okay, here's how you use this grammar point. And then you'd make them come up with sentences to use the grammar point so that they get the idea. And then that's followed by the production stage, where you have the students actually use it on their own or engage with it on a level that is beyond the scope of the scaffolding that you've built to help them get to that point. So they take whatever it is that you've introduced to them, you go through the motions with your help, and then you take the training wheels off. And you say, go do this thing, whatever it is. And in my class, it's make noise. So, I should point out too, a lot of students might be fabulous musicians coming into my class, but many of them haven't experimented with music beyond what they're used to listening to on Spotify, etc. So this doesn't necessarily reflect that a student has no talent, no level, no skill. It has to do more with unfamiliarity, moving to familiarity, moving to internalization. So this is where I start bringing in constructionism. So in my experimental classes, I make them build instruments. I'm a musical instrument builder, that's what I know. I'm a noisemaker, that's what I know. So I make them build noisy musical instruments. Pretty logical, I would say, for a teacher to do something like that. I've got, yeah. And just so you can see, I mean, this is an example. These are things that my students built. Nothing fancy for this particular project. They literally put a box together. They put a pickup in it. They attached things they found lying around that makes noises, and then we run it through some sound effects, and they play shows with it. Comes out sounding pretty spooky and, you know, horror movie soundtrack-esque, but that's the fun of it. That makes them smile, I hope. It is a doorknob, yes. There's a doorknob, there's some barbecue skewers, a fidget spinner, some springs, a rubber band, a doorstop. That's the best one, the doorstop. There's a piece of metal, little metal string there that they like to bow things like that. Yeah, there's lots of little goodies that you can find lying around. You know, that's why Joey knows that, and Karina laughs at me because I like to call hardware stores and the Goodwill the musical instrument shop. So, lots of text here. Sorry, I'm a bad teacher. Construction of musical instruments and noise-making devices cultivates a direct understanding of the instrument. So let's pause there. You don't understand what I mean by building a noise-making instrument. Well, then go build one. That puts the students into a position where they understand the root of what's going into the instrument. Then they have to play around with what it sounds like. That gives them a root of all the language. And I said by language, I mean the types of sounds they can make with it. They have a body of linguistic elements that they can include in their production. Then they also understand beyond that the culture of the musical instrument, the culture of building it, the culture of playing it, the culture of why people like it or dislike it. And there's lots more to it. This is just the musical elements of it. It also presents an opportunity for students to personalize, which I think personally, I think personalization is the strongest element of teaching. If a student is able to internalize and make it their own and relate it to their culture, their background, their interests, score. That's gonna root it deeply in their brain, right? At least that's my goal and hope and dream. So personalization affords links to the students' interests, their culture, their experiences, and forging that connection is something that only they're going to be able to understand. obviously have parallels. They'll understand other people's discussions of their connections, but the connection they make to the instruments that they build is theirs. It's not mine. I wish it were, it'd be more fun, but it's not, it's theirs. Just out of entertainment purposes, this is actually an instrument that I built for a friend. And that was a connection that I had with this couple in Indiana that plays music similar to what I play. And I was using their belief systems plus my sense of aesthetics to create this 13-sided drum form. Irrelevant though. We will move on to the next one. So, personalization. It takes something very important for personalization to work. They have to be comfortable with the setting in which they are learning. Because what they really need to create that personalization, that link, is a self-identity. The self-identity cannot come from somebody who's in a setting where they are not comfortable. If somebody goes to a classroom and they fear saying, oh, I like noise music, or I like comic books, or I like whatever, I like my grandpa's beef potato pie, or whatever, if they're not comfortable, relating to themselves, how can they build a self-identity? How can they express a self-identity? And how can they take that self-identity and then link it to something they're creating? I don't think it's possible. That's something that they told us in our style community classes, but I fully buy into that one. You have to create a classroom situation where students are comfortable, where students are able to explore their own self-identity, and then take that self-identity and introduce that into whatever creative elements they're coming up with. So that puts me to the next bit of how I like to teach, which is the constructionism and the production element.
Got 5 minutes.
I got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
I know.
I got quick enough. Okay. Gosh, well, I really better talk quick because I got a video after this. All right. So production is where the students put their personalization into a real life context. And by real life context, I mean they're out there actually doing something with it without the training wheels, right? So what we're looking at here is a picture. Campbell and I took a bunch of students to Louisiana for an experimental music conference. And they took some of the instruments that they built and presented with them there, which is a fantastic real life context. So it invites validity to their work to be able to do that. It creates memories for them that they link to that creation, and it puts their learning into a context outside of the classroom, possibly outside of even just the operation of whatever it is they're doing. They can relate that to other things that they build or other real life situations. So my classes will be performing with their instruments. They also tended to perform with other artists. They would work with Victoria, for example, or they would work with incoming visiting musical artists, lots of different things, or they would work with other types of artists, like in this performance that's kind of hiding in the background here. There were dancers, there were visual artists, there was also the instruments that were built, plus a visiting professional. They play their own pieces, and we're going to actually see if we can squeeze in a minute of one of those. And they are able to express with those assets that they created, which is what solidifies the entire experience. So let's go for 30 seconds of this. This is Brianna Laredo Reyes and Natalia Cortez playing instruments that they built. This was at the festival in Louisiana. And I won't play the whole thing. It's only 3 or 4 minutes long, but you'll get an idea of just the things that they were doing. So it's very noisy and weird. So if you don't like it, it'll be overseen. In the interest of time, I'll go home and watch it over and over again. So the bottom line, facilitating a full cycle of exposure to, engagement with, and personalization of presentation of related personalized material that gives the students what they need to be able to retain and utilize the material that's being presented from the classroom. Whether or not that's making crazy noise music or something far more practical in somebody's mind. Noise music is practical. Then it is for me. Anyway, that's the idea. You see the cycle of how these things go. So I want to thank the team. We're taking 2 seconds to thank Joey, because Joey is fabulous and put all this together. And if anybody wants to contact me about all the crazy stuff that we do, there's my, and yes, that's my real graduation day.
So, first of all, yeah, thank you all very much. This was great. LoreFest was something we got to do collaboratively, and we really had a good time. Will, I just really internalized what you were talking about having students walk away with something. I think for next semester, that's definitely going in the books. I think I'm going to have in every class, have them create something physical, because I think ephemeral is really important. And, a lot of my students are collecting vinyl, and so they value these physical things. And so, yeah, I think it'll help ascribe meaning to your class beyond even just, being able to remember what they were supposed to learn, but also have a memory, an imprint. So no, this was great. Do y'all have any questions real quick? We can probably do 1 or 2 questions and then go ahead. Whichever one.
Did anybody throw out the donkey lady?
Oh, yeah. We, she did not,
She did make a cut.
yeah, she didn't, she did make the cut, but she was not chosen. But we did gather some really fascinating versions of that story from several families. So.
Next,
Like I grew up,
Yeah.
I grew up next to the house that
Yeah.
she was created.
Yeah.
Like I grew up like right next to the house that caught fire where her performance was created.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
Yeah.
she was raised down there by where I was raised on Salado Creek, which was the Comanche trails to Comanche Peak down to the Alamo, as well as the Dawson Massacre, the Battle of Salado, and all that area now.
And there is I think there is a marker in that space.
I mean, and I'll say this, we went to the African American Museum. We solicited stories from the community in general, and the list was huge. And so what y'all saw was just a sample of some of the stories that had been curated and chosen, but not all of the stories. And that's what's also cool about LoreFest. We got a lot more. I mean, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, we collectively curated about 40 individual, local, and unique stories, and then the students curated about another 30 or 40 on top of that. Some local, some global, but from diasporas all over the world.
But I get calls with the chupacabra. Sometimes Joey will see me post something like, we're out on a chupacabra hunt. I'll get called out. Sometimes it's the borderland. at the time in South and San Antonio, sightings, and I'll go out and go hunt with the chupacabra, so.
Yeah, no, actually, that was one of the stories that we allowed our students to double up on stories as long as it was one of my class and one of Will's classes. Chupacabra was one of those, and they both took completely different directions. One followed more of the political, like Puerto Rican origins. One Chupacabra, and one followed another agrarian one in Texas, and very different stories, very different political implications. It was interesting, and then they collaborated on their performance.
Yeah, the question?
Well, I'm from Puerto Rico, so I'm very partial to that one. Its origins, right? You know, this is a brilliant collection of forces that we have, and the idea of bringing them together, Lord fans, and the main pedagogical techniques that you're applying to it, it's just amazing, beautiful. So I was thinking, is there any thought, or could there be any thought of packaging the idea in a way that could be a seminar for other instructors to maybe apply it at high school level or other places?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think definitely, and we've been the workshops that we've been doing, we've been curating essentially into modules to be able to apply this template in our next semester. And we're also working with the Center for Digital Humanities to preserve the material, but also create an ongoing like geolocated repository for people to submit their own variations. Right?
I think.
No, we'll totally, we'll start collaborating, and you want to comment, you want us to come, you want us to Zoom, whatever y'all want, whatever convenient for y'all, we'll facilitate, putting it together and talking through it, and even coming, like, I know I'll come, like, we can go to Houston and go visit y'all, and like, not just literally, that's what this conference is about, is that we're like, that's how we are, is that we want to directly help each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a workshop idea is something that could be constructed fairly easily. The way that I approach those types of things, it very much is contextual based. So depending on what type of class, for example, you are teaching, that you would want to integrate this in, that's where effectively we would be teaching you in the same way we teach our students, right? For you to be able to make it your own. But yeah, there are definitely these structural things that we could share with anyone that's interested in doing this type of thing. Yeah.
That's one of my projects, is to train my students to record their family members telling folk tales, lore tales.
The documentary side.
Yeah, when you mentioned that you do folklore, I was like, all right, well, there will be a point where he's gonna come in and be like, oh, okay. So. Yeah, no, that's exciting. Well, let's give you all another round of applause. And then I believe next up is the community group, right? Yes, y'all are on? Okay. And it's Victoria, Than, and Ernesto. Those are the three peeps. And